G'day everyone, I'm Bite Nibble Chomp, otherwise known as Ryan O'Shea, the developer of Strategic Command American Civil War and the Wars in the Americas DLC. Today is the beginning of a new multiplayer series. This time I will be playing Old Crow Balthazor in the 1879 Ghosts of the Pacific campaign, which is between Chile and the Allies, which is Peru and Bolivia. This is probably my favourite of the 5 new campaigns, and I guess you could even count the Civil War campaigns too. I really enjoy this one. So it's bound to be a very exciting game. I will be playing as Chile, who have the first move. Old Crow will be taking Peru and Bolivia. The first turn is February 14th, 1879. Let's see how we start. I of course know exactly how we start, but I'll talk you through it before I start actually taking over some of these territories. They are, of course, rightful Chilean territory. Not really, this is a bit of a land grab of a war, but well, makes for an interesting game nonetheless. So, our forces off Antofagasta have reported that the Bolivian littoral is unguarded, and we should move quickly to occupy the region. The defensive treaty between Peru and Bolivia means that we will soon be fighting both nations, so it is of the utmost importance that our land and naval forces are both reinforced at once. As we lack a substantial arms industry, much of our equipment is purchased overseas, particularly in Germany, and this means that a naval blockade could greatly impair our ability to equip and supply our forces. Fortunately, Peru is equally reliant on foreign imports and therefore vulnerable to blockade. Beyond Antofagasta, our next objectives should be the towns of Juanilos, Iquique, and Arica. Long distances, arid terrain, and poor supply in the region will make an overland campaign almost impossible, and victory on land will ultimately depend on first achieving a victory at sea. So, our Commander-in-Chief of the Navy, who is a little bit biased, he recommends that we concentrate on winning the war at sea before preparing for a land campaign. So what happened historically? The war began in February. Chile occupied just about all of this before, like, April or so. Then Peru entered in early April. There was about 6 months of naval battles. There was 2 Chilean ironclads, 2 major Peruvian ironclads, and then Peru also had 2 older monitors as well. Those fought each other more or less to a standstill. The titular Ghost of the Pacific is actually the Peruvian ironclad Huascar, which lasted until about October 1879. Then that was eventually sunk. Chile had effective control of the seas thereafter, quickly blockaded most of the ports into these regions where all the mines are. They captured those, had conquered up to about here by June of 1880, did a bunch of torpedo boat raids up north, effectively shut down the Peruvian economy, or at least its overseas trade and therefore all the arms imports. They landed here, marched overland, took Lima in January of 1881. After that there was a couple of years of fighting, guerrilla warfare and the like in all of this area, before Peru surrendered towards the end of 1883. I'm going to be, broadly speaking, following the same sort of strategy. It obviously worked. Chile did win this war. The modern border between Chile and Peru is up here now, and Bolivia doesn't have a coastline anymore. So, what we start with is a lot of, well, they're half strength. This isn't necessarily damage, it's more so the crews hadn't actually been trained properly. They still had to actually recruit some sailors to command these ships. So we start with 4 gunboats, 2 frigates in Valparaiso, plus another frigate up here, and our 2 ironclads, the Admiral Cochrane and the Blanco Encalada, which is another admiral who fought in the 1836 War of the Confederation. Slight tangent, but Chile actually took Lima in that war too in 1838. I'd like to repeat that, that was very successful. We've got a couple of regiments, a cavalry regiment and an HQ. Those are our total landing forces. We're also going to receive a handful more units in Santiago over the next few months. Beyond that, we can purchase some units. Divisions and regiments are very strong. Battalions, not so much. Garrisons, well, as the name implies, they're garrisons. Can recruit some cavalry, some artillery. Can also recruit some torpedo boats, which, if we were to recruit one immediately, 7 months from now, that's September of 1879, if we can get those out quickly, we might be able to use them to take down one or both of the Peruvian ironclads, which are, of course, our probably first real objective. To win this game, gotta capture Antofagasta, which is here, Iquique, which is here, and Arica, which is there. And then we can win a decisive victory if we're also able to take Lima. My opposition will be attempting to do a similar thing, hold on to these three, and potentially take Valparaiso and Santiago if they, or if Old Crow is very successful. Anyone who has seen my match against Game of the Colonel of the 1898 Remember the Main campaign will have seen that being the developer of the campaign is quite an advantage, but is not a absolute guarantee of victory. So this is bound to be a very interesting campaign. I believe Old Crow has actually written a paper about the War of the Pacific sometime in the past. I never did something like that. I merely read about the war and then made this campaign for it. So, how shall we begin this attack? I think we'll drop a regiment there, suffers landing casualties, that's less than ideal. Occupy the mines. These mines are the majority of the overland income. We can also receive a lot of supplies from our convoys. We've got one from the UK, another from Germany, and a third from Uruguay. Yes, apparently Uruguay did supply Chile with arms. That's not me making a joke. That's an actual part of the history of this war. Also gonna capture this port. Move that out the way so I can unload the rest of my troops. One to conquer that, and one to have our HQ supply. We can also send our ships back to port. Bolivia doesn't have a navy, and Peru's not yet in the war. They'll join in about turn 4. Gonna send this frigate down here, or they're actually corvettes, which same thing, it's basically a small frigate. And we've got some gunboats, which I'm going to send further north. They're pretty useless in combat, but I will be using them to scout location of the Peruvian Navy, and particularly its ironclads, which I want to sink as quickly as possible. The gunboats are at full strength, everyone else will need to be repaired, or more accurately, recruit some more sailors before they can join into battle effectively. Peru starts with a fairly small army like we do. They will receive a bunch of reinforcements fairly early on as well. So eventually we'll need to worry about garrisoning, particularly our ports that have the mines on them, and La Serena as well, which we can deploy units in. But not immediately. I don't really have the troops to spare yet. I only got 80 points. That's not really enough to do anything. So I believe we can end this turn now. Old Crow, it is your turn. I look forward to seeing what you do. And we received 220 MPPs. That is off to a good start. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.